Know this. Introducing the original blood clot podcast, not players. Soothing Semantics. Special dedication all the way from New York. Boom. Yeah, man. SWOT Semantics. Yeah, me know. Boom. Soothing Semantics. Yeah, me know. Big ups to the man now. Soothing Semantics.
Dadoun, 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 Dadoun. Simon, welcome to the Soothing Semantics podcast with your host, Rafi Pinsky. Today we have a very special guest, Simon Dadoun. He is a good friend of mine. He is initially from Canada, moved to New York where we met. I'm a Brooklynite, and I moved to Miami a year ago. I'm sure I mentioned it on the previous podcast. If I didn't, you now know. Simon is a third-year medical student. He is studying urology, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right now I'm on my urology rotation.
Right. So he's studying urology. He has several discussions he would like to delve into today.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, he's going to discuss his move from Canada to New York, Jersey as well, and then to Florida. So we're going to go into several topics. We have a very interesting discussion on urology later in the episode. We hope you enjoy. Simon, welcome to the show. How's it going, brother?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Rafi.
Absolute pleasure.
As someone who spends a lot of time listening to podcasts and so much of my day devoted to that, it's beautiful to finally be on one. I love the setup.
I'm glad.
It's legit.
Yeah, no, I love it myself. I'm really having a great time with it.
Yeah, and like, I don't know if the viewers could see, but there's like lights, cameras, action everywhere.
Yeah, listen, that's how we have to try to do it. We got to keep it interesting at the end of the day. You know, people have like a very short attention span.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Like, you just have to keep things so stimulating for people. Like, this is why people put cucumbers on a plate and charge $300. It's a garnish. It's a garnish. They get like one potato, a fry, a piece of rice, and everyone's like, wow, it's so exquisite.
And it's something interesting that, you know, we see in the apps we use on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about, like, we started with Facebook, right? And, you know, you got like people post articles, they post like all like these long, you know, things going on in their life and all these posts. And, you know, from there we went to Instagram, which is like pictures and like blurbs. But like even that was too intense. Like then they needed Snapchat. And now there's like TikTok, which is blowing up, which is basically, you know, constant stimulation, these like short little videos. Even the commentary on TikTok is like, you can never put more than I think like 40 characters or something like that. You're severely limited.
Don't you think it's kind of like Vine?
Yeah, it's like Vine, but more addicting though. It just seems like way more intense. The feed, the whole, like the way they structure the feed. To be honest, I was never really much of a Vine user, but the way they structure the feed, I mean, you have the personal people that you're following, but that's not even what I find most people spend their time on. They spend time on the second feed, which is called the For You page, which are like all like the viral things, all the viral videos that were posted that are either in your own area or in, you know, or in your country or the world as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so much. It's like one of the few things I haven't actually checked out. I'm not like a major app guy, but I know I had Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Snapchat I haven't had in a while, but I see like TikTok is massive. They're even using it for businesses now.
For sure. And I don't know, I'm on the app on a pretty regular basis, and I see like Gary V's already gone like
forget it.
Yeah. So it's already game over. You know, it's already
yeah, he knows how to utilize every app to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to use every app. But I did want to get into the move that you made from, I know we're going
we can take it
from one
back.
thing to another.
For sure.
But as much as I love Gary V, unfortunately, Gary V, you're not going to be the main topic of discussion. So
I think he felt that somewhere, wherever
right,
he is. Yeah,
right?
he definitely just.
Yeah, dude, he's gonna hear this one day.
Mm-hmm.
He's for sure gonna hear this one day. So you initially lived in Canada. I mean, I already have some sort of a backstory, but obviously we're gonna go over it and kind of.
Yeah, I was born in Montreal. My family on both sides is from there. They emigrated there from Morocco with like my parents and the grandparents in the 70s. And a huge chunk of my childhood was spent there. At that point already, my parents had like moved to the States. My dad started working for United. He's an airline pilot. I just spent, every holiday season, every summer, whenever, there was a little break or something like that, we were always in Montreal. And growing up there spending time there in my childhood was just phenomenal. I think I did like 7 years of hockey camp. And it was, it was great. It was beautiful. But I think a majority of my childhood was spent on the Jersey Shore.
Really?
Yeah, Deal.
Long Ranch. Right. I forgot you spent a lot of time in Deal. That's true.
Yeah, it's great. And then from there, was there for middle school, junior high, and for high school I went to Philadelphia. Went to Yeshiva there. It was great 4 years. Spent a year in Israel. For a while, I thought I was going to be a rabbi. I think that was going to be...
You really thought that?
Yeah, definitely. Up until, I think, 12th grade, I think is when I realized that I had to pick... not that I had to, that I was interested in following a different path. But it was definitely the vision was to, maybe, start off, stay in yeshiva, then go to Brisk maybe.
Dev, by the way, just to be clear, you have to explain some things like
definitely.
Yeah.
So just like
you're gonna be like,
wait,
I gotta go to the iced tea company.
Yeah. So just to explain what the yeshiva system is. So we're raised Orthodox. I was raised as an Orthodox Jew, and there's a schooling system called the Yeshiva schooling system. And, it means different things in different places. But essentially what it means is it's the part of the academic program, or at least part, if not entirely, is focused towards Jewish studies. And, depending on, the type of yeshiva and where it's located is, how intense or how, how deep they'll dive into, Talmudic law, Jewish philosophy. And a lot of the people who make it through this yeshiva system do end up being rabbis. A lot of them who don't end up making phenomenal lawyers or businessmen and so, and et cetera. I have a couple of my friends, went to Harvard, they went to phenomenal schools, or they're starting very successful businesses. And so at that point in my life, I went to a yeshiva high school. It was a sleepaway. There was a dormitory.
I remember those, man. I spent a year in one of those. I got suspended for 2 weeks because I lit a mattress on fire.
Oh, really?
And an idiot me, I threw it in. We thought it would be
How'd
smart.
You get caught?
There was a rat.
There's always a rat.
There was a snitch. Right? And we threw the mattress. It was a small hole, by the way. It wasn't like the entire mattress was on fire. It wasn't a flammable mattress. Most of these mattresses are not meant to be lit on fire, so they're pretty good as far as that's concerned, unless there's already a massive fire in the house. Taking a lighter to a mattress is not going to light it as quickly as you might think.
Right. I think they have like laws though in like the construction of mattresses nowadays to make them like flame retardant.
Probably.
I think, right? Same thing with like pajamas or something like that. Because like back in the day, like half the apartments in New York City that burned down is because someone fell asleep like holding a cigarette.
For sure, dude. So I literally took this small hole in the mattress, black hole in the mattress. Me and two other friends, we decided it was a smart idea to throw it in a dumpster. We didn't think about was that half of it was hanging out of the dumpster. So this snitch sees, okay, well, these guys burned a dumpster. They tell the principal. Next thing we know, we're called in. We have to take this. They had the mattress sitting in the office waiting for us.
So the evidence was ready.
Yeah. Look what you did. And like, okay, Rabbi, there's like a small hole in the mattress. Whoop-de-doo,
Right.
And they, and then we started laughing. We couldn't help it. Long story short, they suspend us. I'm thrilled because I really didn't like the school. And they end up taking the mattress and dragging it into the synagogue, essentially. In every Jewish private school, and I'm sure other, Catholic schools and Muslim schools, they all, they have a mosque or a church in the school or whatever.
The base
so this was right. So we called it a base medrash or whatever. So
a house of study.
Yeah. So they decide to drag this mattress into a massive synagogue, essentially full of like 200 students, and everyone's like,
why?
They just wanted to show like, this is what they did, these bad kids, and it's like, and it's really crazy because in like yeshiva, this is like as bad as it gets. It was in Far Rockaway, New York. Yeah, in the 5 towns of New York. But so that was an interesting experience. But moving on, like back to you as far as like, okay, you were in yeshiva, you had the yeshiva system, 12th grade, you decided to go from being, you would have made a great rabbi, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you would have been
Appreciate
one
that.
of the few rabbis I liked.
Yeah.
I had a few that I liked, but
Yeah. Listen, honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. I think a lot of it had to do with I was thinking about what I really wanted to do. I always had a tendency, passion towards the sciences. I loved helping people. I loved working with people. Even when I was in high school, I was working with local kids in the community, like after school programs. And we also had another program that my friend and I started. There was a couple of children with special needs in the area, so we did some like tutoring sessions on Wednesdays.
Yeah, you did that. You worked with special needs for a few years.
Yeah,
no?
yeah. So that's kind of a trend that just continued while I was living in New York and volunteering and stuff like that, which is like very important to me. And it was honestly, it was a tough decision. People think being a rabbi is like easy way out, like, but it's like, especially in the yeshiva community, because we take it for granted. There's so many people. There's hundreds of kids in the yeshiva. So many of them go on to be rabbis. But the truth is, it's a massive, massive responsibility. And I was kind of like bouncing between the two. Like, should I go to med school or become a rabbi? Like, what's the right path for me? And it was tough. As a doctor, you're responsible for somebody's body, but as a rabbi, you're responsible for their soul, which is, it's deep.
Yeah, it's profound.
Deep. Yeah. It's a heavy, and you always have to be on if you think about it. There's no such your time is never your own, because when you're working with a community and you're like carrying an entire community, it's really an incredible responsibility as well.
Yeah, I feel like there are though a lot of rabbis who just kind of want to fit that mold. Maybe I'm sure they're
True.
great.
There's always going to be especially a system, and especially as comfortable as we are in American society today, and with how incredibly well Jews are treated in this country. There's it's a time of incredible growth for especially the Orthodox Jewish community. Look at communities in New Jersey, communities in New York. They're growing by leaps and bounds, and there's statistically speaking, there's always going to be people who maybe should have chosen another career path.
You never know. It's just more of like, if you genuinely want to be a rabbi, great. If you have genuine intentions to do good things, awesome. But if you're doing it because you know that you're going to get handouts and donations, and you're always going to be set, you may not be wealthy, but you'll always be good.
Taken care of.
That to me is cheap. I don't respect that. But then again, I don't fill my head with it much. You do you, as long as it doesn't affect my life in a negative way. Power to you. But so now you decided you chose to do medicine, right? So
now the question was, I'm in 12th grade. What do I do with my time? Do I jump right into college, or I just kind of take some? It was a big decision for me to make. So I kind of felt like I needed to take some time to figure it out, plan what I wanted to do, and the way I wanted to do it. Because I had been in an all boys yeshiva, like ultra Orthodox environment. So I decided with the advice of my teachers and my rabbis that it would be best if I spent a year in Israel, just trying to acclimate myself in a less, I wouldn't say restrictive, but more or less regulated, less, structured environment. So I went to yeshiva in Israel, and definitely had a lot of time to explore myself. I had time to figure out what I was interested, who I was as a person. And that's when I decided to go back to New York and pursue medical school there.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. Pursue my undergraduate training. So it is a long process. So I went back to New York after that, and I started pre-med. After
a long year of drinking in Israel, you finally said, okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I said, self-discovery. There's different ways to label it, but it was.
For sure. We've all done that. We've all had that rite of passage. Very common.
It is a rite of passage within our community, I think.
Sure. It's very common among religious Jews, and when I say religious Jews, it really varies because there are different religious levels. We're not going to go into it. It's very complicated, but there is this rite of passage for a lot of religious Jews, especially in America, that after high school they decide to do a year or more as exchange students in a sort of yeshiva program. A lot of them just have fun the entire year. Some people grow religiously. They decide to become quote unquote more religious. But it's a year or two or three. Some people stay for a while, where people get to kind of find their way in a sense. Kind of like how the Amish at 18 are kind of like, well, do I want to do this or do I not?
Yeah,
it is, really right? Similar. Do I want to wear these hats? Do I not? Do I want to?
Yeah, I decided not to wear the hat after that. I like the blazer. I like the white shirt. I thought it looked really crisp.
You don't do the hats anymore?
No. It didn't feel right. Also, I'm a Sephardic Jew. It doesn't really like.
By the way, I never understood that. Meaning, I totally agree with that. I don't understand why Sephardic Jews that become kind of like ultra Orthodox decide to wear hats, they should have their own cultural thing.
Right. But the truth is, I think the ultra-Orthodox environment that we have today is really structured off an Ashkenazi Jewish platform.
It is.
And it's kind of the hat kind of, the fedora kind of became the uniform. It's just,
so
it's
weird.
like if you buy into that, that lifestyle, that ideology, then you wear the uniform that's associated with it, and the uniform is the hat,
It's so weird that Ashkenazi, just to be clear for people that don't know, Ashkenazi Jews are Jews who originated from European countries. Sephardic Jews originated from Middle Eastern or Spanish countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they have different foods, different traditions. We're all Jewish. We all we believe in the same things, but we have different traditions based on where we're from. So Europeans are Ashkenazi Jews, which means German in Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
or Old Hebrew.
Aramaic, yeah.
My mistake?
I think, yeah. I don't know.
Either one.
Mm-hmm.
We should know this, though.
Yeah, we should.
We should know this. Especially you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
See this? It's unbelievable. He switches to medical school, and that's it. It goes out the window. Now that we're talking about like the culture, so it's just interesting that the Sephardic Jews, when they become deeper practicing Jews, tend to adopt the dress code of the European Jews. That's just kind of how things worked. There are very religious Sephardic Jews who don't do that, but as a whole, especially in America, it's very common. Even in Israel, it's common.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to the medical field,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of motivated you to go into the specific field you're in?
It was at Sloan Kettering in Manhattan, and the personalities there could honestly make the most boring topics supremely interesting. But so when I came in there, I started thinking, that's what I want to do. And then, I found a research mentor at medical school, and he was a urologist, and he had this great research club where every month everyone would meet together. They would have a list of projects on the board, and you wanted to make sure that your project like progressed on the board. So, it's really, really important to find mentorship in the beginning. And, he kind of in the beginning kind of gives you a project and said, this is your project, this is your baby, take care of it, make it grow. You know what I mean? And every month you want to know that you hit certain milestones so that, your project moved above, because there's a group of 40, 50 people in the room, and everyone's like, look, have you pulled your weight on your project? You don't want to look bad in front of everyone. So it was like a healthy dose of positive peer pressure, and at the same time, an incredible source of mentorship. So I thought I wanted to do urology for the longest time. Then, I was doing this research project on male infertility. And it was comparing like the rates of IVF and IUI, and we'll get into that. IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. IUI stands for intrauterine insemination, and those are really two different paths that people who have difficulty conceiving go along. IVF is much more expensive, much more involved process where you harvest, or you take out an egg from a woman. You pick a sperm cell from the man, and you take a needle, a really specialized glass needle, and you kind of inject the sperm in the egg, and it's this artificial fertilization process.
Artificial insemination, so to speak.
No, it's different. So the next thing is artificial insemination, which is different. That's when you take a semen sample from a gentleman and you put it like in a special syringe. Or
well, it's 2020, by the way. You never know these days.
You never know. But yeah. So you take a syringe and it's kind of like this long catheter-looking thing, and you kind of guide it into the uterus, into the fallopian tube, and you kind of deposit the sperm there. So that's usually more helpful in like women. For some like structural reason, the sperm has a hard time swimming all the way there. So either there's not enough swimmers, or they're not swimming that well, or
there's a Michael Phelps there.
Yeah,
he's the only one making it. Everyone else
right.
is
So
like,
this is kind of more like a swim coach approach. You know what I mean? Kind of like guide you to the egg. But the difference is that no one's manually taking a sperm cell, injecting it into the egg. So we were confirming. Okay. We were looking specifically in gentlemen with poor morphology, meaning their sperm cells were like weirdly shaped. Does using misshapen sperm cells lead to kids with birth defects? And there's no reason scientifically why it should. It's just that we had a lot of patients who were coming into the clinic saying, "Doc, I need to do IVF," right, which is the more expensive process where you directly inject the sperm into an egg, because my morphology is all out of whack. And we just wanted to produce data showing that that, by the way, that's not the case, and you could still do the much more affordable, less invasive process of IUI. And it was a very interesting project. I was working with incredible people in the lab, and I realized that just working with those doctors, working especially in the fertility field, I realized that this is what I wanted to do.
No, it's amazing.
And I think when you're choosing a profession, again, this is full disclosure, like anything that we talk about doesn't constitute medical advice. It's the opinion of a third-year med student who doesn't know anything yet. everything to
Definitely
be taken.
shouldn't sell yourself short like
No,
that.
not selling myself short, but I feel like it is a disclaimer that has to be made.
Yeah,
you know?
because there are going to be people listening to this like, what the heck are you talking
Yeah,
about?
exactly.
It's
So
hard, yeah.
feel free to fact check me or double check everything I say. This is really.
You can email blast him, just
Yeah.
ruin his life.
Yeah. If you do have show notes on the website or however it is that you post it, you could definitely like tag me, ask.
Definitely. No,
But
we'll get people in contact. I just wanted to say, like, I think for a lot of people who aren't familiar with the medical field in general, have this. Oh, this is at least my feeling, that a problem with not contraception, but with conception. Sorry, is more of an issue for women. I mean, is that the case?
That's actually definitely the conception. But what we're finding more and more is that it's kind of, imagine in your head a pie chart, pizza pie. So like 30%, 35 to 40% is going to be female. And we're finding increasingly that more and more, closer to 30%, is male infertility. And the rest is kind of like this mixed or unexplained factor. But there is definitely a conception that a majority of fertility issues it's definitely always the woman's side. But one of the first steps in assessing a couple that's having difficulty conceiving, and by the way, how do you define difficulty conceiving? So that's defined by 12 months of having intercourse at the right times and coitus, and not getting pregnant, right? So the idea is that if you're having intercourse around the time of ovulation, and which is peak fertility time, that in a woman, I think under 35, it's 25% chance each time that she's going to get pregnant. So after 12 times of 25% chance, it should be like 97%. Probability that she should have conceived at that time. So at that point, that's when you start to go to the doctor and you see, like, again, my math, everyone check what I'm saying, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And at that point, that's when you go to a doctor, start evaluating. But the first step, and the least invasive step, is to do a semen analysis in that section. You make sure everything's kosher, quote unquote, with the gentleman. Is what's his sperm count? How are the sperms shaped, which is like the least important thing.
Is that really a thing though? Is the sperm?
They look like they need to be aerodynamic swimmers. There's a long path they need to get from the cervix all the way up.
No, but what I mean is, do the shapes often vary to a large degree? Like, are some very, kind of like water drop shaped? Are others a lot more round? Like,
so
do they really have?
So in a perfect world, they should all be like these little football aerodynamic shaped heads with like little spinning tails that propel them. But a lot of factors, and I think there's also an important distinction that needs to be made between like female eggs and male sperm cells. In females, it's kind of quality over quantity. In men, it's the opposite. It's like we're gonna, ejaculate 200 million of these guys.
It's crazy.
And somewhere in there is going to be our Michael Phelps.
Right.
Probably,
it's crazy.
So like that's really it's two differing strategies altogether. So
For sure.
So you could imagine if you're making 200 million of something, there's going to be a whole bunch that probably aren't that great.
Right. 100%. It really is a quality over quantity.
Also, there's a lot of like these muscular contractions that kind of like force them out that could alter the shape on the way out of the man's body. That could have an impact on morphology.
So you're really just shooting your shot. Like you're literally to a large degree just shooting your shot. You're shooting a bunch of them, hoping one hits the target.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's definitely from like the male's perspective. That's definitely the strategy.
And the crazy thing, which is it's a very redundant thing to say, but I don't think a lot of people really take this into account, is the idea that men can simply do it for the most part without limit. Meaning, if there's one man on the planet and thousands of women, you know what I mean, like that, it's just a crazy concept. It's crazy how we're created so differently in that sense.
Right, definitely.
Like, you know what I mean? But if it were the other way around, we'd have a massive issue.
Right. I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that for now at least, it's the female that's carrying the fetus.
Sure.
So there's endocrinological processes in play that prevent, like, can you imagine if a woman would get pregnant multiple times? Because theoretically every egg that gets released could become a fetus. So it's very important that only one makes it at a time. Mm-hmm. And actually twins are considered a risky pregnancy. So it's
how do twins work, by the way?
So there's different types of twins. Sometimes you have like 2 eggs fertilized by 2 separate sperm, and those are what we call fraternal twins. They usually have 2 separate things going on. They have 2 separate placentas. They're like 2 separate situations, and it's either a fluke. Either, there's certain medications that women take to get pregnant that could cause multiple eggs to be released at one time, and therefore you could fertilize multiple eggs. And then there's another process that could happen where 1 egg gets fertilized, but in some part of like the cell division process, the 2
break apart.
The 2 it started off as 1, but then it just breaks apart. And depending on how many days after conception it breaks apart, depends on like what kind of how the twins will be situated in the female body.
What's the term for the where it breaks apart? Because I know I learned it in biology and I don't remember the term. When they separate. Do you remember it? So is it maybe an M and a Y?
Oh, meiosis. I think you're thinking
right?
meiosis, mitosis. So that's different. So that's kind of when the fertilization first happens. If I'm not mistaken, this is a process that happens afterwards. So it starts off as 1 and kind of like separates. Mm-hmm. But we could definitely double check that. It's a great question, basic science. But yeah, so then I think that's also a big reason. It's really risky to carry multiple pregnancies. Think from a nutritional standpoint. Also, just mass effect. Like how many can you carry in one shot? And twins tend to deliver earlier. I think that's the biggest risk factor.
When do they generally deliver?
I think 35 weeks is the accepted dogma of when twins usually come out.
Just give an idea of months for people.
8th month.
Okay.
Right, and obviously you want the baby to be there as long as possible, getting full-blown nutrition from mom.
It's also hard for the mother. I mean, she has to. She's feeding 2 people, and when you have 4, I mean.
It is a very risky thing. There's all sorts of medical conditions. Women can develop diabetes during pregnancy. They could develop hypertension during pregnancy, and that diabetes or hypertension they develop could carry on even after the pregnancy, and could cause life-changing or life-altering impact on the woman's well-being. But think about it, like there was a really high mortality rate just a few hundred years ago.
I was literally thinking that, by the way. I was thinking that exactly what you were saying.
Pregnancy was lethal back in the day, and we have so many alternatives, although it seems nowadays...
What was the percentage, by the way?
I wish I could say. I heard some were close to... I know pediatric mortality rates I heard were close to 30%.
It's insane. You think about that a couple hundred years ago?
But I just think about, I just finished my OBGYN rotation, and the things that I saw on a daily basis, sometimes the cord was wrapped in the wrong direction or the baby was positioned differently. And we do all these interventions, that didn't exist 200 years ago. And to think about, what happened to these women 200 years ago is just, very frightening. So we've definitely come a long way in that regard. Although now there's kind of a movement to push back towards a more natural way of doing things. Definitely midwives and doulas have picked up in popularity. But yeah, you see all these home birth videos, people delivering in those little
in a bathtub.
The bathtubs or those little kiddie pools. you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So they're on all fours. They're just like pulling it out and holding it in the air like Simba.
Right?
We got it.
And then the 3-year-old daughter is kind of like walking by with her little like a
Barbie doll, a bag of chips.
She's like, "Mama, what are you doing?" She's like, "I'm trying to have a kid." "Mama, can you play with me?"
You got a little brother.
When I give birth to Samantha, we'll hang out. You give me a second, okay? I'm a little busy here. That's what I'm naming my kid. Got a problem with that?
No, not at all.
We'll see. It's a decent name.
We're gonna call her Sam, or?
It's 2020, dude. You can do it. I mean, you can. Mm-hmm. You were able to do it beforehand, but now it's a lot more of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Back to, I guess, my journey through medical school, I decided that's really what I wanted to do. I think definitely, as a med student, you have to first find out what you like to do. It's a very long road. It's very long training. Just to give you a perspective for what I'm interested in doing now and for what I'm pursuing, it's I did 4 years of undergrad. I'm doing 4 years of med school, 4 years of residency, and 3 years of fellowship. So residency is kind of when you pick your specialty. Fellowship is when you pick your subspecialty. So for me, the journey would be to do, 4 years of OBGYN, followed by 3 years of REI, or reproductive endocrinology and infertility, although there's a move to switch it to reproductive endocrinology and fertility, I guess, to stay more positive or to focus more on what the doctors are trying to do. But it's a really long road, so it's very important to find something you're interested in, something you love to do, and something you're passionate about. So the first type of thing you got to assess is what am I interested in? Do I like to do procedures? Do I like to do surgery? Do I like having a connection with my patients? Do I like following my patients in the long term? And those are things you definitely have to consider. Do I like writing really long notes?
How often are you writing notes? How often are you finding
So
yourself writing?
so in my program, I go to the University of Miami. They try and get us to write notes every available moment that they can. It's definitely excellent training to think about, because when you're a resident,
Do they grade you on it?
Yes. So at least I think for every block I've done, we've had to submit, I think sometimes every week, sometimes, every couple of weeks, notes that we've written, and they proofread them, make sure they're up to par, and make sure that our clinical thinking, because it's more than just, it's one thing to just present the information. They want us to see at the end of the note that we have an assessment of what's going on. Like, we're able to take in all the different factors, all the different facts, and, come up with at least a differential. They don't make us come up with a clear diagnosis at this point. We're just students, but we have to explain our thinking. So, I have all these little bits of information. This is what I'm thinking it could be. And for each one, we have to write why yes or why no. Mm-hmm. And at the end, we have our plan. And, our plan is to either order the test that we need to order to, confirm our diagnosis, definitely start them on whatever empiric treatment they need to be started on anyways, just to keep them stable. If they have like another condition, like if they have diabetes or hypertension, make sure they're receiving the medications they need to manage their conditions that they already have, and consult the people that need to be consulted. So if it's somebody who has, someone who's coming in with a really high fever and they have cancer, we definitely want to consult the oncology team, and make sure that that's in the note. But yeah, so there's definitely, you have to definitely think about what you want to do. For me personally, I like doing procedures. I like being in the operating room, but I don't want to be in the operating room all day. I definitely like working with people, interacting with people, and I want to have a little bit of both. I want to have a little bit of surgery, not too long, like not too crazy. I like surgeries that have definitive fixes, things where you go in, you have a specific problem, you fix it, and instant gratification. Their life gets better afterwards. There's a lot of really long procedures, especially if you especially in certain cancers, where there's like a long recovery road afterwards, a lot of rehab, a lot of difficulty, and really long operations. And while I think those things are beautiful, it's not something that I enjoy doing.
Because you don't have that guarantee that it's going to fix itself, and you kind of it's a lot on the head. It's a lot mentally.
It's difficult. It's definitely difficult, and I definitely enjoyed. I remember I did 4 weeks of endocrine surgery and at UM, and just phenomenal physicians. And I love the fact that you could have a patient coming in, their heart's pounding out of their chest. They have this toxic thyroiditis, and they're or Graves' disease, and they're looking miserable. And you take them in the operating room, you do a 3-hour procedure, you take out the thyroid, you make sure that the nerves are still intact, their voice box still works, they can breathe properly, and they are great. They're home the next day, they're back to normal. They do have to take a little pill to replenish their thyroid hormone now that they're missing a thyroid, but it was just like this beautiful instant gratification on a very technical, very precision-based surgery. I love that a lot. But at the same time, I didn't want to be a general surgeon. I liked interacting with people. There's people that don't, like anesthesia, if you think about it. You're only dealing with unconscious people, or getting people to be unconscious.
It's perfect for those people that sat in the back of the class their whole lives.
No, but some of them are really
smart.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're brilliant, but they don't really have to do much. They can kind of just sit there, and then they turn a switch to kill the guy.
No.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. But it's definitely there's definitely very physio based. You have to know your medications. You have to know the impact every medication has on the body. You have to know how to alternate certain things. I remember a few months ago, I was on a really crazy case. It was a 30 woman in her late 30s, had a whole bunch of kids, and she kept on coming to the doctor for these, I have these panic attacks, and they would do these workups, and they were giving her Xanax and all this, and nothing was working. And someone had the idea to test her blood for certain metabolites, things, and they found that she has in her blood, she has these molecules that seem to indicate she has a very rare tumor called a pheochromocytoma. It's an adrenaline producing tumor. It's a tumor that just pumps out pure adrenaline. And she had this right above her kidney, because that's where most...
So what did that feel like for her? Did she explain the feeling? Did she always just felt like she had crazy energy?
Yeah, so it was...
You just see her walking through the street lifting cars.
Yeah. So imagine
people.
that. Imagine that feeling of being chased by a lion, and your heart's beating, and you're starting to sweat, and crazy. And you just your eyes open up, and you're just super alert, but for nothing. You went to go pick up your baby, So try and imagine what that must have been like. And she came in, and she had this adrenaline producing tumor, and they did the workup, they did the X-rays, and a week before they came to operate on her, they did a routine pregnancy test, which is something you do to make, no matter what. And she was pregnant. She had just gotten pregnant right before the operation. So it was like a big discussion. What do you do? Do you operate immediately, or do you wait for the baby to mature and develop? Because most of the baby's organs develop in the first 3 months, and that's really the critical time. That's when like smoking, alcohol, drugs, teratogens, things that cause birth defects, chemicals and stuff like that. That's when they have their biggest impact. Imagine that's when Zika, I guess, would have its biggest impact, because that's when the brain is forming. That's when the body, the heart, the organ, all the internal organs are forming. So the question was, do we do it now or do we wait? And after multiple teams got together, they decided to do it now. Why am I telling you this? Anesthesia was the big, obviously the surgeons were the one doing the work, but this was a big case for anesthesia, because this tumor is producing a ton of adrenaline. And every time you touch that tumor, a little squirt of adrenaline squirts out. So they have to maintain this lady under anesthesia, and they have to make sure that because if the pressure goes too high, she could get a stroke. She could cut off circulation to the fetus. You could imagine what that would be like, explosive blood pressures. And then once they take it out, this lady was used to having such a high adrenaline rush all the time. Once they take that out, her blood pressure drops, so now they got to give her adrenaline to keep her blood pressure up, not as much as she had before.
Okay, so what do they do going forward? I'm saying,
going forward, she made a great recovery. Made a phenomenal recovery. Wow. The baby was okay, but this was a really anesthesia-heavy case. I remember so many people from the anesthesia teams from all over the hospital were popping their heads in and just checking out what was going on.
Incredible that they can locate that issue. Several years ago, they would have no idea. Yeah. They may have thought that this woman was just off her rocker, was dealing with too much stress, couldn't handle it.
And that's what they were telling her for a really long time. And I have a picture of this thing if you want to see it.
At the end of the day, I think everyone's minds are built a certain way. You can direct your mind and decide to put an enormous amount of effort to learn something, but it has to be enough of an interest to you from the get-go. Especially with medicine, if you don't care enough about it, you are simply, if you manage somehow to squeeze your way through school, get just good enough grades to make it, you become a doctor, but you don't genuinely care about what you're doing it for the money, or you're doing it to make your mom and dad happy. If it's not because you absolutely love what you're going into, especially the field you're choosing, I think you're going to be a horrible doctor, and the world does not need a doctor. We have those. I'm very fortunate. I'm sure you are too. I've had very good doctors in my life, but there definitely are bad doctors, and that's why I say do the world a favor, please. If you're going to go into the medical field, please love the field. Yeah, it's so much more than other jobs, because you're dealing with people's lives. For sure. In many fields of medicine. So, no, I'm very impressed I'm very impressed and proud of you, man, that you've decided to take this route. It's a long road, and there's a lot to talk about. I do hope that everyone listening to this has gotten to this part of the video. This is a massive learning curve for me personally. There's there's pretty much everything you spoke about I really didn't know much about. And if you can take the time to bring your attention span above 5 seconds, I think you'll get a lot of essentially this substance in this topic and this discussion that Simon's giving. And it's very informative. And yeah, I definitely hope we can have these discussions more.
For sure. As far as I love talking about it, and
I
love for me this excites me a lot. I definitely.
I'm glad we had you on, dude. Yeah. I'm doing a lot of the listening, but I see how passionate you are. I don't want to interrupt.
Thank you.
We do have an exciting though, because he was talking about the field of
urology. So when you first asked me if I wanted to join, you asked me what I was doing. I said I'm on.
This is the part I love.
I'm on urology right now, and I'm enjoying every second of it. It's really like a quality of life specialty as well. Whether it's not being able to pee or not being able to maintain an erection or anything like that, it's incredible. So I did 2 weeks. So it's interesting just to show you just to go over how most medical schools are structured. The first 2 years tend to be in the books, so to speak. And you do have clinical experiences every couple of weeks. You go to
that way with other fields, like dental is similar.
Dental is very similar, but medical school is changing. But I think dental is kind of staying the same way. The first two, but dental, even throughout the first 2 years, you have time in the lab. You're like my brother's in dental school, and in Rutgers, and he's building teeth from scratch. They give him a little block of cement and carve a tooth out of this.
By the way, now that we're on that subject, so when I was a kid, I fell I don't know, I was about 7 years old. I used to do like these little tricks on scooters. I used to know how to like flip the scooter. I would jump. I had like this scooter I loved. It had these shocks. It was a great scooter. And I drove onto this crack in the street. I lived in Brooklyn, so all the streets are like messed up. And the front tire hit that crack, and I fell face first onto the ground, onto the cement, and I cracked my front tooth. It's been, So I've fixed it so many times over the years.
And it's never like the real thing. It's never like the original thing.
No, because if there's enough of an impact, it breaks off eventually. Yeah. So
for sure, and it's tough with that tooth. The front teeth.
Yeah,
sorry, bro.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So a couple of times I fixed it. It lasted for a few months, but eventually it broke. Not until I went to a dentist here, this young dentist in Miami. She had this new material. She didn't go into detail about what it was, but I noticed that I've not hit it, but I've, in times where the other cement would have broken, this has stayed. And it's just amazing in general with medical research, whether it's dental or whether it's pediatrics. I don't know all the terms, but internal medicine, whatever the case may be, things are progressing. They're compounding. Yeah. As far as progression,
there's an incredible curve, like the exponential growth that's being experienced in medical improvement and medical technology. To the point we don't even know like how to deal. Like I know for sure in fertility, there's all sorts of questions being raised that we don't even know how to deal with. We're not even ready for. Sometimes it's beautiful. These are people who never would have been able to have the incredible satisfaction that comes with raising a family and having a direct impact on a kid's life and raising a child or children, and all sorts of types of families are now starting to build their family. People who have rare genetic mutations. There's and I think in London they were able to take mitochondrial DNA, which is every cell has two kinds of DNA. It has the DNA in the nucleus and it has DNA in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. That has its separate DNA that's passed on from the mom. Sometimes there's defects in that DNA and they can't have, healthy kids. So now they're getting mitochondrial donors. So you're having, parents with, DNA, like their DNA from their egg, DNA from the dad's sperm, DNA from the mitochondrial donor. And sometimes if, for whatever reason, the mom can't carry the baby, they have a surrogate.
The surrogate mother.
So now you have, 4 people involved in the delivery of this child.
But you know what the thing is?
Which is very interesting.
Here's the thing, though, and this is kind of far-fetched, but don't you feel like this has been a concept for a while already, surrogate mothers, but when you have that option, I feel like in a weird way it can come to a time similar in a way to natural selection, where if women have the option to kind of choose where they want the sperm from or who they want to carry their kid, they can become so selective to the point where people who are less strong physically or not as intelligent, they'll kind of be singled out, and people will kind of just gravitate towards the taller people, stronger people, smarter people. Do you see that ever becoming a problem? Do you see that? I don't even know if that's a problem.
So I think nowadays, so it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because within I think the sperm donor community that already exists, you could go on any sperm donor website, and they'll be like, well, listen, you could donate, but if you're shorter than 5'8", or if you're under this weight, then we
That's
prefer
crazy.
That you don't.
It's like the Tinder of sperm.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
It's definitely interesting. But I think nowadays we're still in a society that primarily people who have kids tend to be couples that are together and they want to raise a child together. So I don't know. I think what's more interesting is the revolution that's coming in terms of pre-implantation genomics, which is assessing the genes of embryos before we put them in we put them inside a uterus, and genetic engineering, gene editing, and down the road gametogenesis, which means making gametes, which are eggs or sperm cells, from a stem cell, which is revolutionary. You don't even need sperm to make a child, and that you could take a fat cell and turn it into a stem.
You don't need sperm to be. You shouldn't tell people this. That's the end of the male species.
No, you don't need sperm or eggs. You don't need but obviously you would need a cell sample, but you wouldn't need. So if, let's say, a scenario, someone had some sort of chemotherapy that rendered them infertile for whatever reason, those people, sadly, right now they won't be able to have children. But in the future, if this pans out, and of course there's a lot of speculation about it, those people who otherwise wouldn't be able to, raise a family will now be able to.
It's insane. And think about it. How high? You know what also gets to me? with all of these things being introduced, the life expectancy will, I'm sure, will go up maybe a few years. In the next. I mean, I can't give you any kind of chart for this. The life expectancy definitely has gone up. I mean, the world population is increasing. Do you think it'd be possible to come to a point where we're living to 200 years? Like it seems like we're constantly tackling different diseases, different sicknesses on a constant basis. We're always finding new avenues to take. It sounds ludicrous to say that death won't be a thing anymore, but taking into account that we've solved so many issues in such a rapid period of time, it only seems like if we keep going this route, we may get to a point where people are living ridiculously longer than we currently are right now. Do you see that as a possibility?
So that's actually a really good question, but I don't think I know the answer to this, but from what I've seen, I mean, this is just a conjecture. It's not based on any data or science or anything like that. But, even with all the major medical advancements like that we've seen in the past 200 years, everything from like running clean water, which by the way is probably like the single greatest invention of the past 300 years, is like, plumbing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
People don't
appreciate plumbing.
That gets me, by the way. And it still gets me, by the way. Like, I'll go to my sink or I'll go to my fridge, and the fridge has this little button. I put my cup there. And, if it's 3 a.m, maybe I came home late and I just want a cup of water. I just go there and I push this button and water comes out. There are people in other countries that would never imagine that thing exists.
Yeah.
And then there are people like, but the water from the fridge is like not so clean. I got to get bottled water. It's like, do you understand that you literally have a fountain of water that is unlimited unless something happens. Worst case, you can go out or you could drink out of the toilet. No, but you have water at all times and it's crystal clear. It's cold. There's ice. People, it's so crazy how incredible that is when you think about it and really learn to appreciate the fact that it's a norm now. Mm-hmm. It's been a norm for a while already, but that is something that should be so appreciated.
Yeah, and I think
it's amazing.
I think it's think we definitely have to appreciate the times that we live in. We definitely take that for granted. I think if you would take, the wealthiest noblemen from like 500 years ago and bring them to any neighborhood that you choose, and like the fact that they're like, you could take them to a supermarket and their minds would explode.
Oh my God.
It's like, but yeah, every time you look at your toilet, you should just think of how many lives it saved.
Right? The poorest people in the world now have luxuries that the richest people 500 years ago wouldn't even dream of having.
Definitely in the U.S. Yeah.
For sure. No, I mean, there are other countries that unfortunately I can't say the same about every country in the world, for sure. But living in America, especially where I live in Aventura, it's a beautiful neighborhood. You have things accessible to people with a very low income. And listen, at the end of the day, everyone's comparing their lives to one another. So
right, I think our standard has elevated.
Right,
so
right.
Now
people are never satisfied.
Yeah, also but it's not wrong to expect more and if more could be given, like again, it's just because your basic needs are met, it doesn't mean like that you shouldn't be able to experience more or enjoy more. Yeah. Sure.
If the standards are higher, then that's just how life works.
That's where we're at a different place in our journey.
And another thing going into this, okay, but I do want to get to the surprise, to the main point, the meat and potatoes of this podcast, what we've all been waiting for. But before I do that, I just this point has been getting to me. So I lived with my grandmother growing up. I'm just going off on a tangent to quickly explain this, but she was my parent growing up. I never met my parents, and she's kind of been my mom and my dad, and so I'm extremely close with her. She still lives in New York, but we keep in touch at least once a week, if not more. And she has a very old school mindset she's very young spirited, but she is very in love with the older generation, where she just hates the idea of cell phones being so prevalent now, where everyone's on their phones, and I hear that. But sometimes people from the older generations don't realize the pros of technology nowadays. Now, a lot of people take it too far. They get too distracted. They don't know how to live in the moment. There are cons, definitely cons, but things are accessible in such a rapid pace. You can do so much from a cell phone. You can order food. You can order clothing. You can make millions upon millions of dollars with this. You can talk to anyone from anywhere in the world. You can negotiate with a hostage. you can
with a hostage or a hostage taker.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
You can negotiate with a hostage as well. No, you can't do that. But you caught my joke.
Yeah,
That's a good catch. I appreciate that.
No, but
it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do nowadays. And people that are a bit older, they just they're not in tune with it. I think to a large degree they don't know how to work it. It's so against and so different from what they grew up with. They automatically disconnect themselves from it. They automatically just throw it away because it's like, oh, but it's just I don't know what to do, and I use my index fingers to text. Yeah. And I get it, but it's just like, if you can try, and I understand if you're 70, it's kind of you're kind of at the point where you just don't even want to bother. You're like, I'll let my grandson send an email. My grandmother's actually great with it. She has a Facebook, which is pretty active, but
my grandmother has like Instagram, Snapchat.
Yeah, some people are like that. Some people really know how to. They know how to figure it out.
But it's interesting because she figured out that's a much better way to communicate with us, all her grandchildren.
It's so much easier.
Like she'll send us a pic or snap us a pic or something like that, and like we'll definitely respond versus a phone call or a text.
100%.
And she gets to keep tabs on our lives and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I try and respond to my grandma as quick as possible, but like if you're on the gram and
on the gram,
really that's what it is.
She should have a thing, by the way. You should open up a new page.
Follow her, Solange Buganim on Instagram. Give her a follow.
See, that's the thing about Sephardic Jews. You guys have the coolest names.
Yeah.
Solange Buganim. It sounds like a dish, like a Mediterranean dish. No, it's all about adaptation. Where humans are the most adaptive creatures. If you can put in the effort to go with the times, and that's an option. I don't care about being a part of the latest phone that comes out. I don't need the newest iPhone and the newest this, the newest that, but I like to know a nice amount about the technology that's coming out, because if it can affect me positively, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you want to take advantage of it.
I want to take advantage of it because it creates massive efficiency. That's one thing about technology, is if you can use it to your advantage and not get too sucked into it, if you can still live in the moment where you're at a concert and you're not looking at the concert through your phone, and you can actually live in the moment and spend time with your family and put your phone down at dinner, and there needs to be a gray area for people that know how to live with that gray area, but then use technology to their advantage. I think live wonderful lives, because you can do so many things in the course of a day. You can spend time with your family. You can make money. You can go to an event. I mean, the list goes on.
Right.
When we were back in the day, it would take 18 years to travel across the world. You can literally go from country to country in days. There's so many things you can do now, and people just are bitter about it. There are people who just always complain. But
for sure.
On the topic of prosthetic penises, Simon.
Yeah, so let me just give a brief topic as Taz came back. So again, he asked me to come on. I said I was doing urology. And right now, so I did 2 weeks of general urology. So for those who don't know, urologists deal from the kidney to the tip of the urethra. If that's a penis or it's, or whatever, they go through that whole course down. Anything along that way is what they take care of. So the first 2 weeks were general urology. So it was a lot of prostate cancer. It was a lot of kidney cancer. People had blocked, ureters or, really plumbing issues. And then the second 2 weeks that I've been doing is male infertility, male and men's health, And a lot of that has to do with either sexual dysfunction or, like we spoke about, infertility. So a lot of the surgeries they do is either varicocele repairs, and those are things that we could talk about in a bit, very common in men, and that could impact your fertility. And a lot of the things that we see in clinic are actually like men's sexual health, and a big complaint that we see a lot of the time in people from all ages. Like we have people in their 20s, people in their and someone in their 90s, came in last week. So,
he's a trooper in his 90s. He's still trying to go.
Not only that, he was there. Like
He's still trying to get it up at 90.
Well, he's married happily for like 60 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's so admirable.
Yeah, for sure.
He still got it at 90.
Still got it. So they're there for.
That's another thing, by the way. It's incredible what they're doing as far as testosterone. I'm sure with estrogen too, but I know more about the testosterone side.
Right.
Where think about all the pills, the Cialis, Viagra. Aside from all the pills, there's so many different formulas and medical research done on keeping libido on both sides.
Oh, for sure.
And
for sure.
Back in the day, I don't know the age, but back in the day, if it's over, it's over. Like if you can't get it up anymore, and she isn't into it anymore, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, that's changed drastically.
And there's so many options. And I think before we get to that, I think we should definitely take a few minutes to talk about like how erections happen, like the process that happens in our brains and in our blood vessels. And we could talk about like the different medical therapies that kind of exist and the options that happen. So,
I think for most people, men just, for women, people just think for men it's just like,
yeah,
boom, you know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like that on a really simple level. Right. You know, the process starts in the brain. You know, getting aroused. There's signals that come from the brain and the spinal.
The head brain. Men have two brains, so we're talking about the head brain.
So the signal comes from, you know, deep part in the brain that and also the spinal cord as well. There's a reflex that arc that could happen to help with that process. So it comes from the brain and it tells the body to, you know, get an erection. So you have nerves. Let's backtrack a minute and talk about actually what a penis is. You know, so a penis is essentially it's these two tubes that fill with blood. And the idea is to get more blood in than is coming out, and it's like a balloon, and it just kind of inflates with blood. And it's these two tubes that sit on top, and then there's a urethra that runs underneath in between those two tubes and comes up over in the shape of a head. The brain will send nerve impulses to the blood vessels in that area and say, hey, arteries, I want you to dilate. Dilate means to open up, to let more blood into the penis. The penis becomes really full. As the penis fills up with blood, it starts to compress the veins. So arteries go in, veins go out. So it compresses the veins and stops blood from leaving the penis, and then you end up with a rigid erection, hopefully. Right? But there's two processes that have to go down. You need to have an intact nervous system, right? So you have to have a good spinal cord, you have to have a good brain, and you have these tiny, tiny little nerves, very fragile nerves that run under the prostate that supply that tell the blood vessels in the penis to dilate, and you need to have good blood vessels, right? And those are two very important things that you need to have. Another thing to talk about is what kind of nerves tell you to have an erection. So I'm sure we know fight or flight, rest and digest, right? So the flight or fight is, you know, imagine you're getting attacked by a lion, right? So you either run or you
get a boner.
Or you fight the lion. No, so exactly. The thing you don't want to happen, you don't want to get an erection while that lion's chasing you. And, you know, similar things.
Maybe you would scare the lion off. You never know.
Well, I think in the past, if it did happen to somebody, I think that person got ate by the lion. So they didn't pass on those genes to their kids.
You just turn around. You turn around. The lion's running after you. Turn around. You do like this jump, like this like 180 jump, and you're just like, rah! You know, the lion just runs off. You know?
Right. So when you're in like full fight or flight stress mode, we call that the sympathetic system. It's very hard to get an erection. It's also hard to digest food, like all things that are not. We kind of reroute the blood. So if you notice, if you jump into an ice cold swimming pool, or if you're being chased, or if you're running a really long marathon, you might get shrinkage, right? That's your body diverting blood away from non-essential centers, so away from your gut, away from your reproductive organs, and it's routing them towards the muscles and towards the brain. So to keep those functioning at all costs.
It's incredible what the body does.
So it's similar to that. So you actually have to be in a really relaxed space to be able to get an erection. That's our parasympathetic system. And you have to have a certain amount of, you have to be in a relaxed state to be able to maintain one. And then again, we spoke about the nerves and we spoke about the blood vessels, right? So there's a bunch of diseases that it could affect both. So from the nervous side, if you're really, really stressed out, you're not going to be able to get an erection, right? Or that's just, physiology. It's the way our bodies were designed.
Sure.
Right? If you, God forbid, have a spinal cord injury, you also won't be able to maintain an erection because you won't be able to send the signal to the blood vessels to get them to dilate, right? And then there's mix. So if you have a disease like diabetes, right? Diabetes affects the tiny blood vessels that supply the nerves, right? And it kind of cuts off the circulation of those tiny nerves, and those nerves start to die, right? So now you don't have a good nervous signal to the blood vessels telling them to dilate. Again, these are very small, very fragile nerves that are easily injured. Everywhere from prostate surgery to people who go mountain biking, either from nervous or actually damage to the penis from all those bumps.
That's really a thing. I know. Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
No, I think these are people who go a lot and consistently, and yeah. So back to diabetes. Diabetes is actually a condition that affects blood vessels. So it damages the blood supply to the nerves, and it damages the actual blood vessels, farther on in the disease in the penis. So a lot of the medication that we use to, target erectile dysfunction works on that level. It works to kind of force those blood vessels open to get blood in there. So how do we start? So someone comes in with erectile dysfunction. Usually the first thing you got to assess is the problem here or is the problem downstairs? And usually the easiest way to get to like figure out that is, do you have erections at night? You know, because if the problem is that they're very stressed out, they're very nervous, usually they'll still have erections at night, or they'll still be able to, you know, work things out on their own.
If they're nervous, they would have them at night.
Yes, because they're like kind of not conscious, so to speak. So meaning if the problem with getting erections is in their head, then, you know, maybe it's a performance anxiety thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at night, you know, when they're sleeping, they still would be able to have we call it morning tumescence is the scientific word for it, or evening or nocturnal tumescence. But if it's a problem with actual blood vessels in the penis, then even at night they'll have a problem developing an erection, or if it's a nervous issue. Problem with the nervous system. So the first thing they like to start off is with a medication that dilates blood vessels. This is something we know as Viagra, Cialis. You've seen the commercials for them. You know, call your doctor if you have an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. It's a real condition. It's called a priapism. That means the blood kind of stayed in the penis for so long it started to coagulate. That's a big problem. No bueno.
Not enjoyable.
Not painful.
Painful.
They have to drain it. It's
you
not
can't
good.
get through doors. Yeah, I mean, you could.
Some of us have those problems. Some of us don't.
Yeah. You walk into the wall, and you know it's not.
Break your nose.
Yeah, well, you could hang groceries onto your jacket, but it's not. Yeah.
So that's usually the first line of therapy. You know, the difference between Viagra, Cialis. There's all these different Levitra. Most of them, I think Cialis is definitely the one that I've seen in clinic prescribed more. It has
Cialis is more common.
Prescribed more recently, especially people who have actual issues, because it has a longer half-life. Half-life means the amount of time it takes for half of it to leave to your body to not digest, but to metabolize half of the drug and get it out of your system. So I think Viagra is halfway out of your system in 4 hours. Cialis is 20 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So Cialis actually, it's much longer lasting. The benefit is that Cialis could be taken on a full stomach. That's another thing. Mm-hmm. So imagine you're planning your dinner date, right? So you can't take the Viagra on a full stomach. So dinner and, movie, and then what you really have to, there's a lot of stress. It only works for 4 hours. So you really have to plot out. Versus Cialis, some people take a really big dose in the morning or in the general vicinity that they're going to be, attempting to, engage with their partner. And in that case, it's definitely more, it's just a more flexible medication. And, the prices are dropping. These drugs are going generic. You go on GoodRx on the app. They'll point you to the cheapest location, cheapest price in your area if that's something you're interested in.
That's good stuff. That's good knowledge for people.
Yeah, definitely. And what these drugs do is they but they augment the dilation of these blood vessels of these arteries in the penis to kind of force blood in there. And in young people, it's usually a confidence issue, so they'll prescribe it until you get your confidence back. In people,
really, for confidence?
Well, it's not. So I think there's actually a fundamental difference between, like, maybe, again, this is a personal opinion thing. I think difference between men and women and how they approach these things. I think men tend to focus. Everything is based on their last experience. I think that's like, so if that didn't go well, then they have like permanent or this perpetuating self-doubt. Versus, I don't know, maybe again, I don't know. I can't speak for women.
I feel like I think it's prevalent for both genders.
It could be, yeah.
I think
definitely.
I think it's a feeling of maybe, lack of confidence, rejection. They assume the last experience was bad, the next one's going to be bad as well. I don't. You think it's more common with men?
I think with men, just because the nature of the difference in when you have an erection, it's either there or not. You know what I mean?
100%.
So it's definitely a much more, I guess, maybe noticeable. Maybe men have much more of their identity tied up into
for sure,
into that sort of thing.
It's like
definitely
thing.
It could be definitely a much more of a mental game. So they'll prescribe it, and from what I've seen, it helps. It helps people a lot, at least that first few times till they get back on that horse. And then some people just be either diabetes or they have some sort of spinal cord damage or trauma. It's definitely helpful. If pills don't work, there is another medical therapy. It's their intracavernosal injections. You kind of, we spoke about those two tubes that kind of fill up with blood side by side like this. You directly inject a really tiny needle into the corpus cavernosa, which is those two tubes, and you inject this medication. It really forces these blood vessels wide open.
But how would the person would have to do it on himself?
Yeah, so right before attempting, and it's pretty fast.
And how long does it last? How does that work?
I don't know how long it lasts. I know in clinic we use it for Dopplers. Sometimes, in clinic, sometimes we need to assess somebody's erectile function, and we use ultrasound to see how much blood is going in and out. and you can't really just, okay, sir, we need you to turn on your erection. So what we do, so what we do is they inject with.
Imagine they had a switch for that.
You just attach
an electrical switch.
This is a medical switch. This is what it is, and they inject it, and they kind of force this erection, and they run their test, and then they inject a second drug, which is essentially Sudafed, and that shrinks the erection.
Sudafed shrinks the erection.
Sudafed, the way Sudafed works is that it kind of constricts blood vessels to stop the flow of blood. So if you have a boggy sinuses, you take Sudafed, and it kind of constricts the blood vessels. Since there's less blood going there, there's less fluid leaking out of the blood vessels, and you have less of the that clogs running your nose. So if you inject Sudafed in the penis, it'll cause the penis blood vessels to contract, and it'll turn off your erection, so to speak.
Interesting.
I remember we had one patient, severe diabetes, unmatched, poorly managed, and he was trying to start a family, and three injections, nothing was happening, nothing was working. So in that case, after that, there's different therapies, vacuums, and all that stuff. But for definitive management in people with poor blood vessels or poor neurological function, people who have really bad spinal cord injury, they do something called a penile prosthesis. So again, remember how we spoke about there's these two tubes that kind of inflate with blood? Well, what if you could substitute those two tubes with plastic tubes, with prosthetic tubes? And, you could fill those up with saline or saltwater fluid, and then you could maintain an erection that way. So the idea is to replace those two tubes that fill with blood with artificial tubes. And that is a long-term solution. It's kind of permanent because once you kind of slide those tubes in there, you damage all the natural blood vessels. So it's an irreversible process. But sensation is maintained if it's done right. And we could talk about sizing in a minute. Picking the right tube size. People tend to think that I'll just replace it with these big old tubes, and no, it has to actually be a little bit smaller than your natural size because...
Oh, that's so disappointing.
This is like a delicate organ. So if you're putting in big tubes, you could actually put so much pressure from the inside out of the penis.
Because you're essentially, you're stretching it too much.
You're stretching it. So you could either kill off the nerves, which would go completely numb, which I think is worse, exponentially worse.
Right.
And then also you could kind of perforate. There's so much pressure. There's no blood supply to that area, and that area dies. And then the implant leaks out, and then you have a very big problem.
Or a small problem.
Or no problem from that point on. It's if it's bad enough, they might have.
So what is generally the lack of size? Meaning how much size are they?
So I can't
losing?
give you the exact number. But it's definitely they try and keep it a little bit smaller than the actual. They try and keep it as perfect as possible. But I don't think it's ever. No one's ever going to tell you it's as good as it was when you're in your 20s.
Without question.
Without question.
It's artificial. There's no debate.
Yeah, but that being said, people have incredible satisfaction from it, and
wow.
This is a very big, very important part of life, very important part of being a human and being intimate with another person, and you actually see it. I've seen it being placed in people who had car accidents when they were 6 years old, and they couldn't feel they have no movement from waist down, and it really, this device changes their lives. We saw it in. 95-year-old gentleman wanted a replacement. He wanted a different model.
Different model?
Yeah, so there's three types, and I think I'm just going to pull it out now.
Oh, snap. Whipping out the Johnson.
These are the two tubes we spoke about. This is a reservoir that fills with fluid, and this is our pump. So I don't know if you can see, the pump sits in between your two testicles. It's like a third nut. And you grab that pump.
It sits between the two testicles.
Yeah.
At all times, it's always there.
It's always there. And to be honest,
it's hard enough keeping two of them in your pants, but you gotta.
Yeah, but this little guy, apparently it doesn't bother people that much. Yeah, here, you give it a little firm squeeze. And it requires effort. You need to get. Imagine this is inside your scrotum, so you're gonna have to get 2 fingers in there, and hold on.
It's inside. Oh, they insert it into.
Yeah, this goes in. So these two tubes go inside the penis.
Right.
And they take the place of the natural tubes that we have there, right? This reservoir goes around the...
How do those fit in? That size? That's the size of them?
Well, it goes like this. So I'd imagine this guy's penis, this part goes into your, some of it goes deeper in. Your penis actually goes much deeper in than from what we see. I mean, this is 5 inches?
No, but I thought the thickness.
The tubes. So we could inflate it. So I guess this would be flaccid, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
And then let me just make it completely flaccid, and then
try to turn it, because I can see it. Try to turn it to the camera angle. That camera angle. You
imagine you're pumping, and I probably have 2 hands on this, but There we go. There's one.
And both of them are going to inflate.
Just give this one a hand. And yeah, this is it. So we're pumping. So imagine just, I guess.
What's with the top? What's with the whole section over there?
Oh, this is the reservoir. So this is where the fluid stays
That's
when it's not being
they
used.
put that in your body.
So this goes right around your bladder.
That's insane.
So, and then this goes here, and this is big technology fight. So there's actually 3 different types. Two are the inflatables. It's called a 3-piece unit. So
it's
1, 2, 3.
Crazy. This is complete.
This is the future, man. This is
crazy.
This is for the people that never want to retire.
By the way, kudos to those people.
Yeah.
By the way, who knows if dude, by the time we're 90, this might not even be a thing anymore.
So actually,
we might be looking at this when we're 90, and this might be that old school, like,
so I'm about
Macintosh, 19, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so probably a poor choice of words, but I'm about to blow your mind. Basically, there's going to be a convention soon in Europe right now where they're discussing a robotic version of this that you could control with your phone, likely.
Oh my God!
So
the problem is if somebody gets the wrong phone.
Well,
if someone in the wrong hands.
Well,
imagine about it. Wait, Simon. Imagine your phone. You leave your phone at the gym, and somebody opens the phone, sees the app, and they're like, and they know what it is, and they start pumping your penis.
There's probably gonna be some sort of there's probably some sort of face ID, but imagine getting hacked.
The person's turning on and off your boner.
Yeah, but it's kind of crazy. But think about it. This is a great system, and it helps a lot of people. But think about it. There's a pump here, and you got to squeeze, and some people get this pain, this aching from having basically this guy hanging out there.
Yeah.
So imagine instead of having this whole system, you have this, and you have a little motor right underneath it, and you go on the app, you turn the thing, and just goes up, turn it up, you finish, just goes down. And so how do you take it down? There's a little release button right here. You squeeze it, and we squeeze.
Can you see this? Show this to me.
Yeah, so we squeeze right here.
Oh, the release. Okay.
So there's a release clasp right here. You squeeze, and I don't know if you can notice this reservoir.
So you have to squeeze the penis.
Yeah, you got to squeeze it, and we're done.
Wow.
Look at that. And
it's
there's
so much more effective than any medication.
Right. I mean,
it's
a permanent solution. So again, we always, I guess in medicine in general, we always try and keep the least invasive, every surgery has its risks. There's always the risk of infection, especially in diabetics, because they don't have that good vascular blood supply.
Here's another question. Before I want to interject. This is something, like a pacemaker, other things where the body isn't familiar with this installment. So if you're putting this into the body, are the blood cells going to start fighting this?
So you're asking about rejection. That's an excellent question. So rejection tends to be a problem. So the way cells fight things in an immune style response is by recognizing foreign surfaces on the protein. So example, if I put a piece of your liver in my body, my body would recognize that the proteins on the surface of your liver, on the cells of your liver, are different than mine, and it'll automatically attack and try and reject it. So this doesn't have proteins on the surface. So the mechanism by which the body rejects things, it's not the classical mechanism. What could happen is it could form, because there's inflammation from this, there could be scar tissue that forms over it. And we see this in breast implants all the time. There's these, a lot of times they have to be switched out because there's a pocket of scar tissue that kind of encases the whole breast tissue, and it causes like rippling in the breast and like weird shapes and stuff like that, and it has to get changed out. So it's a very similar process. So yeah, there's definitely be some scarring that forms around these tubes, but in general, people tend to have a really good response. These usually last about 10 years or 10 years worth of uses. I don't know if you're using it 5 times. I don't know how many.
Why is it 10 years? It's just
that's just what we've seen so far. I think these things have been around for, I think, maybe 30 years, if not more. Yeah, I don't think we definitely don't have to worry about rejection in the classical sense of the term. What's a big risk is infection. Especially the people that usually need to get these devices tend to not be the healthiest individuals.
Correct.
And so it's very easy for an infection to form and cause issues and problems, and it could eventually force you to have to replace it or to take cut off the parts that are infected. And it is a problem. So yeah, usually before they put this in, if it's in a diabetic, they'll make sure they have like their diabetes under a certain threshold.
Can't they go up again though? Meaning if it's under that threshold, isn't there a risk that it can increase again?
Right, but the idea is that in the post-operative period, while things are healing, their diabetes is under control. That's I think that's the main thing. It's a really cool device.
How much does a procedure and installment like this cost?
I believe around $17,000. Just because it's a medical device at the end of the day. I think this procedure is definitely...
It's not covered by insurance. It's considered like cosmetic or whatever?
It depends. I think at the VA or if, for people who are I think it is covered by insurance.
Really?
And certain insurances if you have good insurance. But yeah, this is a part of being a human being, and it should definitely be covered by insurance.
I agree. I agree it should be, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like an augmentation of sorts, Like vasectomies are not covered by insurance, I don't think. But yeah, it's a really, really cool, really interesting device that has a big impact on a lot of people. So there's another version that's like less technical. It's just 2 tubes, and it's called a malleable. These are for people who have poor grip strength or people who can't see their bellies, If they're really, really obese and they can't see their bellies, they're not going to be able to like reach under and squeeze. So they just it's a bendable one. So when they're finished, they just point it down. And when they want to use it, they just point it up. So it's not as like... It doesn't look as natural as this would look.
Right. And how much? And that's a much cheaper option?
It's a little bit cheaper, but it's not...
If insurance is covering it, then obviously everybody would...
Yeah, I know. You definitely would want one of these. It's a much more natural look. The malleables are just less fussy.
The Titan Touch.
The Coloplast Titan, there's another company from Boston Scientific called AMS. There's a lot of like money researching and like what's the perfect antibiotics that you could like kind of soak it in before. I think with AMS they have a proprietary like cocktail of antibiotics that their implants comes like pre-soaked in. Coloplast, I think it's more customizable. You get to pick your own.
It's incredible. This is so cool.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just it's an interesting device. It's just interesting to show what's going on, and there's still being advancements. There's still advancements being made in this field. And shout out to my to one of the doctor to let me borrow this for a little bit. Really cool.
Awesome. Well, you're gonna mention the name, or you're not gonna?
No. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we're gonna conclude here.
Yeah, for sure.
Simon, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was an excellent conversation,
I'm glad to hear.
I'd be happy to continue in any form. Just hit me up whenever.
We'll definitely have you back on, brother. It was very informative. I learned a ton. I hope the people listening will also learn. I hope that, like I mentioned earlier, they're actually gonna have the patience to sit through it, because a lot of people don't have the mental space for medicine, man. Like, and I didn't choose to go into it. I don't have nearly the same passion that you do, or even close to it. But I admire it immensely, and I do enjoy learning about it, especially if it's not in a classroom or not being tested on it, but if it's a friend who's discussing it with me. And I look forward to doing future episodes about medicine in the future. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on to the episode. Guys, this has been another episode of Soothing Semantics with your host, Rafi Pinsky. Stay tuned for the next episode.